Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors meeting of March 25th, 2024. The meeting is being recorded. It's available by in-person, internet, Zoom, and also on phone. We're going to do a roll call of the Board of Directors, please.
Roll call, Brian Noggle.
Here.
Amir Famili.
Here.
Ted Lyons.
Here.
Jeff Morgan. Here. Norma Cusick.
Here.
Kevin Baker. Linda Rosenfeld. Here. Sean Ziller. He's coming
He's
in
joining right now.
Mark Ramis.
Here.
A sec for Sean to get connected, and we do have a quorum. Sean, we're just finishing roll call. Are you here? Sean, can you unmute and let us know?
Hi, sorry, I'm late. I'm here.
Sean is here. We've got 8 board members present.
All right, thank you very much. The board packages were distributed in advance. If anybody not receive it, opportunity to look at it in advance. Okay. Let's review the agenda and any need for executive sessions.
I have no changes to the agenda, no need for executive session. I do just want to draw the board's attention to item 7, the monthly financial review. There is no February report at this time. We'll do that in April.
Okay, thank you. All right. Now moving to the approval of minutes from the March 11th, 2024 meeting. Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sorry. Just learning. Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Motion made by Jeff and seconded by Linda. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. I mean, move to public comments. Are there any comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda?
No comments. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much. Moving on to action and discussion items, we have nothing under finance and administration. We have 2 items under water. The first one is the Lehigh River pump upgrades seeking approval. It's the Ivory documents in our board package, digital board package, pages 6 through 40.
All right, thank you, Liesl. Amy Rohrbach is going to present this project. This project takes place at what we call our Big Lehigh pump station. It's the city pump station where the intake for the Lehigh River is. And the purpose of the project is to increase resiliency and redundancy in event that the Little Lehigh intake, the primary water supply intake for the city, that should go down. So in order to fully utilize the Big Lehigh intake, we have to address taste and odor concerns and also some mechanical concerns that Amy will talk about. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amy.
Hi, thank you, Chuck. As Chuck said, this is upgrades to the Lehigh River intake pump station. Currently, the Lehigh River is used infrequently due to taste and odor concerns. So we are investigating upgrades to the pump station, as Chuck mentioned, for the resiliency and redundancy in the event the Little Lehigh is taken out of service for maintenance or some other issue. The upgrade includes 3 components, kind of broken down into 3 components. There's the chemical feed for taste and odor, the pumping and mechanical upgrades in the pump station itself, and then the intake screens. So in 2018, a chemical feed study was performed to evaluate options to address taste and odor on the Lehigh River, but the study was never advanced further to design. But before today is a professional service authorization that will evaluate the recommendations that were part of that study and include preliminary design of a chemical feeds study chemical feed system to address the taste and odor at the Lehigh River. The anticipated chemical would be powder activated carbon, which is already used at the water filtration plant but the current dosing location at the plant isn't sufficient to address the taste and odor issues of the Lehigh River.
Do we know what the taste and odor issues are caused by, just out of curiosity?
Part of the original study did go into that, and we have a lot of data. We have to look, I don't know off the top.
I don't want to get sidetracked. I just was curious.
It's MIB and geosmin are the compounds.
Again,
MIB and geosmin that are in the river. They're sort of byproducts of bacteria, algae.
oh, okay.
So it's more of a summertime phenomenon.
Okay, it's not a pollution going in there.
No.
Thank you.
And Northampton also, we reached out to them in part of that study and got some data from them as well on what they're using. So we leaned on them as well. There will be dosing at the facility itself, at the pump station, to address these taste and odor concerns. The second component of the upgrades are the pumps themselves. Currently, there are 4 pumps at the plant, 2 smaller pumps and 2 larger pumps. The 2 larger pumps are oversized for the pumping that we need. So in order to have a firm capacity of 20 million gallons per day, with 2 pumps in operation and 1 pump not in operation, we are proposing to reduce one of the larger pumps to a smaller size pump, and also upgrade with a new VFD for that pump. And then the existing pumps also have surge control with it's Parco is the manufacturer. And that system has some problems. It's a hydraulic system with hydraulic fluid, and there's a lot of maintenance concerns, and it's problematic for the operations crews. So we are investigating options to replace that system. And then the third component is the intake screening. Currently, the intake screens are very labor intensive and difficult to clean. And it's somewhat dangerous, if you will, in the way they have to hang out over the river kind of to clean the screens off. And it's just not ideal. So we're looking at part of this study, this preliminary engineering will look at options, different screening intake, analysis of different options, and different cleaning methods as well. So it would improve function. There were 4 proposals received, ranging in cost from $77,000 to $174,400. HDR Engineering had the lowest cost at $77,000, and we reviewed their proposal amongst the others, and we felt that they prepared a very well defined scope, and they were responsive to our request for proposal. They also happen to be the firm that performed the study in 2018, so they have a lot of historic knowledge of the pump station, and we felt that they would be the best team to lead this project. So the total authorization before you today is for $92,000, $77,000 being the professional service authorization for HDR. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Amy, obviously this is some historical, knowledge that was before my time. But obviously that study, you partnered with HDR in 2016 and then the study in 2018. So can you just speak to kind of the fact that we're now, 6-8 years on? Will that study have changed significantly since that time that would impact therefore this work coming up, or maybe just make that connection point for me?
I don't feel that will change the approach much, in that the taste and odor issues are still the same, still relevant, same compounds that we're addressing today that we would have looked at back then. So I don't feel that would be, that time lapse is going to affect proceeding.
Perfect, thank you.
Has the, go ahead. So Lehigh River and the intake structure there, has that ever been used long-term, or has it always been the Little Lehigh and Sean Spring, and this is more emergency or some other
Long-term, I'm not aware of long-term. We do run it quarterly, just for sample collection. So I mean, it usually runs for 2 days maybe. But we typically also combined it with a little Lehigh as well. So you're not getting full Lehigh River water at that point.
But if there would be some sort of environmental issue like the Little Lehigh.
Right.
This would be critical to have the full capacity of the big Lehigh station.
Was there a reason that we, after the study was finished in 2018, we waited till now to restart this project?
I don't know the answer.
Well, it might be budget related, but yeah, good question. I mean, it's been on our radar. It's probably was not, it didn't rise to the priority level that we needed. Yeah, I think we're recognizing now that this is critical for resiliency. Trying to facilitate, system wide to try to improve our resiliency and redundancy.
And if I recall back then, there was some expected work that was gonna need to be done for the Little Lehigh intake. And we made some minor improvements, which sort of extended that time frame of when additional work would need to happen.
Yeah, I think it was the rebuild of this intake screen at the Little Lehigh. That bought us some time, basically.
Thank you.
Question on the powder or activated powder. It gets injected at the intake, and does that get removed or does it get absorbed? Or is it, does it build up in the system later on, part of the filtration plant?
Well, it does, the intake, the transmission main between the plant where the pump station and plant, there will be some settling out in there, and that is another down the road probably project to address just cleaning that. And the plant itself, I don't think there's any issues. There won't be need to be changes at the plant if that's what you're.
I can just add to that, the powdered activated carbon reacts with the MIBG osmond, and with the velocities that we have in the force main, we're expecting that it's gonna carry all the way through to the plant. And then once it's at the plant, wherever we have like a wide spot in the plant, basically settling basis, that pack will settle out. So it'll become part of our residuals. So there's a residuals, addition as part of this. But it really is the most cost-effective way to deal with MIBG osmond. There's really no other. There's other ways at much higher capital costs. This is the lowest cost option to deal with it. But we don't expect it to settle out in the pipeline. We expect it to settle out at the plant.
How big's the line runs down from that? Not important.
Miles, I don't know what, 2-3 miles.
No, I mean, how big's the line?
Oh, diameter?
Yeah.
36.
36.
Yeah.
So I hate to ask this question, but, has there been any PFAS testing on the Lehigh? That we know it can be used long-term if we have to, or if that presents any other options? I know it needs to be, in place as a backup.
There has been some testing. I wouldn't say there's been extensive testing. At this point, I wouldn't consider it a major concern.
Okay.
It is present, but not at high levels by any means. But once again, with dealing with surface water, that could really change at any moment, really.
Building on Jeff's questions, if we have I don't know, water treatment, so just help me out, maybe this is totally out of the whack, but having a fixed bed that the water will flow to, so hopefully we'll have more contact for removing some of the future fluorocarbon. Is that a feasible thing for the water treatment facility, or this is not, the flow is so much and pipe is too wide that to have a fixed bed, the water to go through?
Are you saying for the taste and odor concerns, or?
There's an order, potentially, maybe they're using the same technology for removing PFAS.
It is possible. There's not a lot of land available to add some type of, fixed bed system like a GAC system. But I mean, it is theoretically possible, but at a very high capital cost.
Yeah, I'll say, there are people that put granular activated carbon in their filters, like you're saying. But there's a huge cost, operating cost associated with that, because the carbon removes organics as well, and then you have to keep replacing it. So we're adding just enough that we need for MIBG osmond, and we're not.
Okay.
We're not messing with any other contaminant.
Thank you.
So there's no plan to change the operations of the system for the Big Lehigh. It's just gonna be as a backup still remaining that way and tested quarterly and so this system of activated carbon being placed in there is just once every quarter, most likely, unless there's an absolute need to switch over from the Little Lehigh.
Yes, I would say there's not an intent to make it more of a permanent type of source. We may use it or just to get the frequency of, using the pumps and the VFDs and all that, but as far as extended periods at this point, no.
Any other questions of the board?
I have one. How long has this system been in? How long have we been using the Lehigh River as a backup to,
Late 80s was put in, honestly.
yeah. And prior to that, the Lehigh River was probably so polluted that we wouldn't even consider using it.
Yeah, just remember that North End is right upstream of, the closest intake is just a couple miles up at North End, so, and that's their primary source.
Thank you.
Was one more question, Mr. Chairman. Was this the only pump station that had a chemical feed study done?
Yes, it's really our only pump station of any distance.
John, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Mark, go ahead. Thank you. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question. I don't know if the intake has like air compressors to blow the screens. I know especially sometimes in the winter, the Little Lehigh, the Big Lehigh River will have a lot of stuff coming down and on when there's a lot of flow conditions like we just had recently in the screens, and in the wintertime especially, the intake coming into the pumps will be subject to phenomena like frazzle ice, where the pumps will trip on low flow. I'm wondering, do we have blowbacks? Do we have air compressors that blow everything off of the screen so we can maintain a good source of suction for our pumps?
We don't currently have that set up, but there is a compressor at the site because the original intake, when the station was first put online, was out in the middle of the river, and it was this I don't quite understand fully how it functioned, but there was a compressor that would blow it out to open it up before it would intake. And that compressor still is on site, and part of the proposal from HDR was investigating utilizing that compressor and utilizing it for assistance in cleaning the intake screens.
So do you know if that compressor is on like a time blow? In other words, like a screen that would clean the intake like every 3 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever, or is that timed?
I'm not sure how it was originally designed.
It's currently not.
It's not in use currently, so.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other board questions? Okay, all right, we have before us a capital project authorization, preliminary design phase for a total amount of $92,000 for the Allentown Division Lehigh River Pump Station upgrades. That includes the professional services authorization to HDR Incorporated for $77,000. I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Linda, seconded by Amir. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Amy. All right, moving on. Second item under water, we have lead service line replacement program documents and agreements. Seeking approval of the yellow documents within the board package, digital board packet pages 41 to 55.
All right, so this item, we have quite a few people in the room and online who have been involved in this one. Sue Sampson and Brooke Neby from LCA, also the city folks, Jenny and Ryan Chamberlain. A lot of people in the room, AJ, Andrew, Chris, and others, all involved in this project. So I will turn to others for help along the way, but I do have a brief presentation to go through to kind of set the stage for why these agreements or the new documents are important. These presentations, both the presentations for today are posted on our website. Anyone should need that. So the lead program documents that we have before you, there's really two documents. One is a policy and the other one is a property owner agreement. Both relate to our lead service line replacement program, and just have this this clip from the local news from about, I don't know, 8 months ago or so, regarding a grant that was awarded to LCA for replacement of lead service lines. There we go. And this entire program is really being driven by regulatory requirements from the Environmental Protection Agency to address lead in drinking water. Do you need something, Brian?
Sorry, I was missing my signature packet, which I did not sign yet. So. It was here before, it's gone now.
See the screen.
Sorry.
So I have excerpted on the screen some items from EPA about where lead gets into drinking water. It could be from the pipeline that is bringing water into the home. It could be from plumbing fixtures within the home. However, generally it is not from the water itself. So the water does not contain lead from its natural sources. It enters the drinking water through those plumbing fixtures that are shown on the diagram. It's also become a major highlight because of the prevalence of lead in drinking water systems and the health risk to humans, and especially pregnant women and children under the age of 6. So the regulatory framework has been shifting more toward replacing all lead that exists in the public water systems, and LCA, of course, will need to participate in that effort. So I think for this one, I'm going to turn to Andrew to review just briefly what the EPA proposed rule looks like and why we're talking about a replacement program.
Sure. So the lead and copper rule was originally implemented in 1990s. There was a rule revision that was put into place 2 years ago now. And to make it even more fun, the EPA has also put out lead and copper rule improvements, which sort of expands off of the previous regulations. What is really being required is inventorying all of the lead service lines and really all the lines in general throughout all systems, which we have a pretty decent handle on at this point. But it's also going to require the replacement of lead service lines. With the new rule, there's actually a proposal that all lead service lines will have to be removed within a 10-year period of being approved. So with that being said, up here on the screen, we have what we currently believe are the lead service line counts throughout Allentown. So there are a good amount of lead service lines or galvanized that are going to be required to be replaced on both the public, which would be from the main to the curb stop, and then the private would be from the curb stop into the meter inside the resident. And we also do have a good amount of unknown service lines at this point. As you can see, there's almost 16,000 that throughout the system, we do not currently know what they are. We do have a project that's in place right now that is going to help us identify some of those lines. But with that being said, and having lines that are going to be required to be replaced, we went out for grant funding last year. And we had a program approved for cycle one, which is going to be a replacement of 150 service lines throughout Allentown. And this, but do we, when we go into the policy, wherever I was, okay. So this program, we identified, like we said, a good amount of lead service lines that need to be replaced. But with having to put both the public and the private side, it gets a little fuzzy because we do not own the private side service line, but they are going to be required to be replaced. So the way that the EPA has defined a lead service line replacement is that you need to remove both sides of lead if it is present. Otherwise, it does not really count as a lead service line replacement. And not only that, but a partial, which would be only one side, it actually increases the amount of lead that would be present in the water for maybe up to 6 months. So that's a concern as well, that you do not want to only replace one side and leave, the private side still containing galvanized or lead service line.
And can you explain that, or the chemistry behind that?
As far as why
It would increase if you just take care of the.
Sure, it more or less has to do with a disruption of the service line at that point. So obviously there's going to be a lot of vibrations and movements where the particles within those service lines are going to be disrupted, moved, and then settle out or be connected to other parts that within the premise.
Could just flush that out.
I'm sure there's some data that's available that could show that's a yay or a nay type of thing, but as I can't say that we can just flush it out for an extended period of time to lower the lead levels.
Okay.
Now, there are risk mitigation measures that sort of address what you described. So when the lead service line is replaced, the EPA and PADP has told us to implement risk mitigation measures. And what that is really 3 different things. So it's public notification, making sure that address and that customer is aware that they do have a lead service line or that lead service line is being replaced. If we do disrupt or replace that line, we would also have to issue a pitcher filter, which would be certified to remove the lead from the water. And that's for an up to 6-month period. And then within 3 to 6 months, we are also required to at least attempt to collect a water sample to verify that the lead levels have either receded or are still elevated.
So on this diagram, this is pulled from some of our customer communication materials. We're showing both the water service line and the sewer service lateral. Wanted to highlight this because it is an important set of definitions within the policy document about what is the authority service line, what is the customer's service line. And as Andrew mentioned, trying to differentiate between a full service line replacement and a partial. Just want to be clear, if in this example, for example, the customer's side of the line is made of copper and the LCA portion or the authority portion is made of lead, we replace the lead portion, that is considered a full replacement. We don't need to replace the copper. However, if the LCA side is lead and the customer side is lead or galvanized requirement replacement, if we only replace the LCA side, then that would be considered the partial. So we're not talking about replacing every service line in the system, only the portions that require replacement. So there could be lots and lots of instances where we're replacing only the public side or only the private side, and that takes care of the problem. What we don't want is for lead to be remaining in the system after we replace half of it.
How far into the house do you go if you have to do a private side?
To the meter.
To the meter.
To the meter. Yeah. So there's been a lot of public communication around this topic. The partial lead service line replacement requirement to avoid those has been really a kind of a major point of internal conversation about how do we manage that. So this is a little repetitive of what Andrew went over, but that's good. Repetition is the key. The partial lead service line replacements, that this is written into the EPA requirement that we should be avoiding them whenever possible. We will not get credit, so to speak, for a partial lead service line replacement in terms of meeting the regulatory requirement unless we've made every possible effort to make sure both sides that need replaced are replaced. And then again, risk mitigation measures after the service line is replaced. Those are some steps that are written into the regulation to reduce public health risk. So within the lead service line replacement program, we see 3 major scenarios where we might be encountering these and needing to replace them. 2 of them we can kind of plan for, budget for, put programs together around a specific lead service line replacement project like the one Andrew mentioned. We're starting this year for the first 150, and then we'll make more progress in future years. And also, as we do water main replacement projects in the city of Allentown, for example, we're doing 2 miles of water main every year. As we're doing that, we're replacing public side service lines. That's an opportunity to then also get the rest of the lead service lines on the private side done as part of that program. And then Chris can talk about all the many different ways we encounter service lines that need attention during regular operations. And I don't know if you want to give just some examples of how that happens.
So oftentimes we get a call for water in the street, and that kind of triggers my guys to go out into the field and do some investigation. If during the investigation, we realize that there is a leak and it is a service line that is LCA's and it's lead, we'll make every possible chance to replace it right then and there. If we come across a situation where we need special road opening permits or we're unable to change out the lead right away, what we do is we put ourselves on a 6-day notification. We let the customer know that we'll be back within 6 days to replace our side currently. We hand the customer education material along with pictures and replacement filters so they can start filtering their water immediately, kind of based on the initial question of lead in the water, because we actually created a disturbance with our repair. And we go back and we will replace the lead service line in kind of a more scheduled, organized fashion within 6 days of discovery. To date, we've done 42.
This year.
Yeah, 2024, we've done 40.
Chris, when you say give them a filter, do they have to put that on their drinking water sources or somewhere in the main line?
It is actually a Brita style filter. It's like a pitcher that you would fill from your tap, and it filters the water so you can put it in your refrigerator and subsequently pour. We've done a whole bunch of calculations, and it's based on number of people in the house and how much estimated water usage, and we'll hand them a pitcher that's good for a month and a half and then extra filters. So they have them for the full 6-month period.
So needless to say, this is going to be a very involved program, both from a just operational procedural sort of standpoint, as well as financially, to get to all of those service lines in the city of Allentown. And then the suburban division, we still need to do more inventory work, although we think the exposure there is significantly less. So there's some real reasons that we thought it would be important to have some documents that the board look at and also approve, which is what we have in front of you today. And the reason we're doing this now is because the first round of lead service lines through the Cycle 1 project are going to be starting this spring, and we're doing customer communication now. Before we start getting into the realm of replacing privately owned materials, we really wanted to have firm commitment from LCA, kind of in a stated formal way that that's what we're doing, as well as to look at an agreement or a process to protect LCA and the customer as we go into these individually, home by home, to do these replacements. So we have, that's why we have 2 different documents for you to look at.
I have to say also that these documents were prepared by everyone on the team that I mentioned, plus with great help from Kevin Reed and especially Rich Campbell from King Spry, and lots of help from other utilities. There's not a lot of original work here. We really borrowed and stole from whoever is doing good work out there on these programs. So just a couple of highlights on the two documents. First is the lead service line replacement policy. And as I said, it really serves the primary purpose of stating LCA's commitment to the program. And it is regulatorily required, so we're committed whether we have a policy or not. However, we thought it would be important for this program to state that commitment in a policy form because we're doing private side replacements. And that is a requirement of the EPA program, but it is different for public utilities to be doing that. And also want to be clear that that commitment includes using public funds for those replacements. So, where to the extent possible, we would seek grants to cover the private side replacements, but we know grants are not available for the bulk of the cost. We're going to have to fund that through our own methods and means, rates, and new borrowing. That's the policy. And then the second document is a bit longer, and that's the customer agreement related to the service line. And this is a document that we would actually have every individual property owner read and sign before we would agree to replace their private side service line. Includes LCA's responsibilities as well as the property owner responsibilities, and then gives the authorization for us to be on their property and do that replacement. The commitment that we have, and using some guidelines, I think from EPA or proposed regulation from EPA, we have developed a series of notification protocols that we would go through to make sure the customer has this information, has opportunity to sign on, has opportunity to agree. And if they really do not want us on their property, we can't make that happen. We can't force that necessarily to happen. So we have a final form that we would ask them to formally decline the service line replacement if they're not going to participate in the program. And that gives LCA some cover that we did everything we could to make it happen.
And I was probably here and I didn't take the time to get in the weeds on it. Properties are rental properties. How do we deal with that?
It is a property owner that we would be trying to coordinate with. The way that we would do notification would be to both the tenant and the property owner, but ultimately we need the property owner to sign off on doing the work.
You're gonna have to schedule, obviously, entrance to the property through the tenant. That's gonna get complicated.
Yeah, like I said, the procedural logistics sort of aspects of this program are really significant, and that's why we have a full team of people.
Just to follow up, same thing, I didn't read this in great detail either, but I mean, is this gonna get into liens or enforcement, or you have to do this, or when the house is sold, the municipality says this has to be done? Is it, whereas now it's kind of all voluntary? And I know other clients who they'll go in and do inspections when the house is being sold, and if there's a sump pump or there's, a lead service line, for example, that may have to then be taken care of, or is that all down the road?
That's a little bit down the road. Those are some of the procedures, I would say, that we'll need to consider about how to implement this stuff. And there are some requirements or guidance that we can find in the EPA regulation that we'll follow in terms of, when you follow up, if someone declines and then later they sell their property, what is the required follow-up to get the new property owner signed on to potentially replace their service line. All of those things I think we're still needing to work out. But to get us to the point where we have an official document that says LCA is going to do these private side replacements, and for this first round of projects, here's the legal document that we want the customer and LCA to sign to allow that to happen. That's kind of the first step we wanted to put in. We did just that a good point. We wanted to have the approval on the customer agreement to allow us for some flexibility if we need to make some minor changes to the agreement itself. So right now, the agreement is written essentially for a cycle one project. But if we need to adjust it to address circumstances of future projects or future situations, you know, those are minor details that we would want flexibility to change.
This is no cost to customer, the cost will be recovered through rate later on.
Yeah, so in the case of the, keep thinking I'm at the end, but I do have one more slide. For the cycle one project, because we have grant monies coming to us, then who's not covered by grants will go through the rate process with the city of Allentown. In the future, if projects are funded without grants, then they would be folded into the rates directly. Yeah, but not a direct cost to the individual customer that's having their line replaced. The last slide I keep flipping to, I do think it's important just to share how much information is available on our website, and that work has been really ongoing over the last couple of years to build out information, fact sheets, public information about lead in drinking water, and then our program. This is just an example, but if you go to LehighCountyAuthority.org/lead-free, that's where you can find all of those great resources. And thanks to Sue Sampson for putting this together. And since we're recognizing employees, this smiling face is Anthony Morales, who is an operations technician in the city of Allentown, who's been going door to door representing us and helping with the customer communication.
How does that go, going door to door? That must be a real experience.
Chris.
1 out of 3. So I think our customer care team and our communications department do a phenomenal job of reaching out and trying to get us 100%. But when we do our door to door, we get about 1 out of 3. We do have availability right on our website there to schedule appointments. So we've actually had more appointments from outside of our scope, just based on neighbors chatting.
Yes.
And we've not turned down a single appointment. We do everything in our power to get as much information as we can to make sure that this goes as smooth as possible. So 1 out of 3 is great though. We were expecting 1 out of 10 and we're hitting 1 out of 3. So we were pretty happy with that.
Sean, you have a question?
I do, thank you. Just in reviewing this last night, I saw that the LCA is responsible obviously for final grading, seeding, and the restoration of exterior landscaping and hardscaping. Are there any concerns from LCA's perspective that the costs associated with kind of restoration as a result of this work, it could kind of get a bit wily? You know, is there any concerns there that's going to become a kind of prohibitive?
I think the cost of this entire program is going to be enormous.
Sure.
Yeah, so the cost of some of the restoration work, I think, is somewhat minor in comparison to everything else that has to happen here. Certainly, we would want to have contractors look at trenchless installations where that's possible to minimize the disruption. But this is not unlike restorations that we would do, for example, for our water main replacement projects when we're doing service line replacements anyway. So.
And Sean, Lehigh County Authority actually owns a special piece of equipment called the Cobus line puller that allows us to make a much smaller hole. And what it does is it goes down about 4 feet and we can make a 3 foot by 3 foot hole and pull copper up to 120 feet. So it's 3 foot by 3 foot on one side, 3 foot by 3 foot on the other side. And all we would then need to do is kind of get to the curb stop and make a cotton connection there. So,
Got it.
you know, there's technology out there that would minimize that as much as possible.
That's the trenchless approach
Yeah.
that we would be doing.
We use it right.
Yeah, all I was thinking of when we were going through this was, you know, I have a fence that's right adjacent to kind of that area. So I thought to myself, well, if a property owner, you know, if you have to cut through a fence or something like that, I would imagine you wouldn't go that far, but just was a question.
Just following up on what Chris just said, so is this gonna be, the work gonna be done by LCA staff, contractors, combination? How's it all gonna get done?
It's gonna be primarily handled by contractors. On the private side for the emergency and routine work, we still need to do some internal work and figure out how that will be done. But the bulk of the replacements are gonna be done through the project. So the cycle one project will do 150 this year. We're shooting for 1,000 next year. That will be contracted out. And then same thing for the water main.
Interesting.
Any other questions from the board? I have a few. I assume that this will also be printed in Spanish, the documents in other languages maybe, but primarily Spanish and English.
Yeah, Sue Sampson, you can speak about that if you like. I know you have resources for translation. And I think our approach was to do Spanish only. But Sue, did you have anything else you wanted to add on that?
Yes, that's correct. We are going to have the agreement and the initial explanation documents available in Spanish on the website. So they'll receive it in English. There'll be information to drive traffic to the website to review the documents in Spanish, but we do want to obtain that legal agreement back in the English version.
I should also note that Sue has recently rolled out, actually, it's been a little while, on our website, a translate function. So you can translate the entire website into other languages if needed.
Any estimate on, and probably should be in with a property owner agreement, the amount of time you expect their service to be out for the replacement?
And the replacement itself is a day, less than a day, a couple of hours, but it would really be more focused on like the scheduling process. That's the biggest issue of trying to get them scheduled and get them timed up for the customer. Right.
The under Exhibit A, there was the diagram that you had on the screen. About it, just from the standpoint of lay people, I mean, we all understand this, and having our own people do all this, we understand this, what's going to go on. But for other people who are not in the business and looking at having you have access to their house and to the curb and disrupting their service, it's really you can see it's a legal document. Sorry, Kevin, but it is, and it's very complicated to really get to the gist of it. And I would actually suggest having a focus group of residents read the document, say, what do they think about it? Is it close? Is it easy to understand? You understand what you're doing, what we're doing, and the responsibilities. And I think a much simpler document to communicate what we're doing and why would be much better for general residents to understand, and easier for them to accept and approve the document giving them for signing.
So I don't disagree with you. I think the initial draft of this was very legal in terms of the way that it was written. Kevin's nodding, so thank you for that, Kevin. This is written in much more layperson language for the most part, but covers everything that needs to be covered. But this is not the only communication. We're giving you this as the agreement that needs to be approved because it's an agreement, but the communication materials that would go with it would be where we would get into much more of the message and the tone and the easier explanations.
Very easy for them to understand.
Exactly. So that, I mean, this is just one piece of the whole package of how it would be explained to them.
Any other questions, board?
Good luck.
What do you need from us?
We would like for the, thank you for the good wishes. We would like for the two documents to be approved, the lead service line replacement policy, as well as the property owner agreement for the lead service line replacement program, with a caveat of minor adjustments to the agreement language, to be reviewed with the solicitor as the program progresses, something along those lines. Kevin, do you want to add anything on these, since you and Rich worked really hard on these and how we want these approved, or why we want these approved.
Yeah, I'll just echo kind of your comments. I think the question is well taken. We try to strike a balance. Even in the agreement itself, it did start out a lot more legalese, and that is a default for us attorneys. We're self-aware of that. But we did have some good dialogue and conversation to try to make that more user-friendly. But in the end, really the user-friendly is going to be in the other communication pieces. We do have to set forth certain things to, in a legal way, outline responsibilities on both parties' sides. So there's a certain element of that we can't get away from in the agreement, but it has certainly been scaled down, some of the legalese, I think. Yeah, this is a massive project. I don't know what else I can say. It's a large undertaking. And I think it's important that we understand that there might have to be some minor adjustments along the way as this rolls out.
So go back to 7 pages for a resident to review, and that's gonna be hard to understand. All right. So I need a motion and a second for accepting these 2 documents.
I'll make a motion.
Somebody is going.
That Sean,
Yes.
a motion made by Sean and seconded by Lynn. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
does that motion include flexibility for staff in consultation with the solicitor to adjust the agreement from time to time to reflect current program requirements?
Yes, it does. Sean, is that acceptable to you?
That is acceptable to me, sir.
Oh, it's between the lines, okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to wastewater. We have several items under wastewater. The first one being industrial pretreatment plant master plan. It's a discussion topic.
I need a glass of water for this one. It's been a little while since we talked about the pretreatment plant. In fact, I believe the last major presentation was in March of 2023. So, Phil, is that right, roughly?
Roughly.
So this is a update of where we are on the pretreatment plant and how it fits into the context of the broader Pines Island sewer system and the Act 537 plan. So I do have a presentation. Again, I will ask for help from others in the room on this one and forward to this discussion. So the second. Try that again. The pretreatment plant is located in Vogelsville area. I think everyone should be familiar with it. Want to spend a little bit of time on some background and history and kind of get everyone up to speed, especially since we have a couple new board members who may not have heard the presentation in the past. Pretreatment plant was built in the late 1980s, but actually the history goes back to the 1970s when the county of Lehigh began to do pretreatment service to try to support the growing manufacturing base in Western Lehigh County. And the goal at the time in the 1980s was to centralize pretreatment to support the growth that was happening. So we have had a major brewery wanting to locate here in the early 1970s and some other food and beverage manufacturing. Pretreatment service is needed. It's still needed today because these large industries are discharging high-strength waste into the public system, and the pretreatment plant is essentially handling that high-strength waste so that it does not cause harm to the rest of the public system downstream. The facility that's shown here, how to get rid of that bar, there we go. All right. The facility that's shown on the screen here was constructed in 1990 by the county of Lehigh. The county paid for it and constructed it and operated it until 2009 when they transferred it to LCA debt-free. So it was viewed as a significant community investment and they treated it as such. Look, that's a little bit of the history. Wanted to just mention some of the components here, or the value, the economic value of the pretreatment plant to the region. These are some facts and figures pulled from an AECOM report that they prepared for us earlier last year. There are 22 businesses and 11 different industries that are located in our region that rely on the pretreatment plant. And those businesses employed almost 3,000 workers in 2022, generated significant earnings that support our region's economy. And the pretreatment plant has been a successful component of the marketing strategy for Lehigh Valley to attract food and beverage manufacturing to our region. This is not insignificant facility for our region. And this is a little bit, I think, back to basics for Lehigh County Authority, but I think it is important for us to bear in mind that our mission here is to protect public health and the environment by providing high quality, safe, and reliable service. And this pretreatment plant does fit within that mission, but even more so, it does fit within our vision. And this vision statement is part of our strategic plan to be a trusted and engaged community partner, advancing the vitality of our region through exceptional water and wastewater services. It's an important component that we're here not only to provide the service to protect public health and the environment, but also that we're engaging with the community on what the community's needs are and supporting the goals of the region. So the overarching goals for the centralized pretreatment approach is to support the industries that are here and also support their growth, both of those industries as well as future economic growth that the region is looking for. It also, another goal is to be cost effective, realize economies of scale as we're doing it in this centralized way, and also to leverage that regional support so that when we're talking about a regional program, we have greater access to grants or other funding opportunities. And as a municipal authority, having access to low-cost financing. So some of the overarching goals of the program, and specifically the pretreatment plant project goals we've been embarking upon over the last couple of years. We absolutely need to address near-term critical facility projects or needs, and we'll go over what some of those are and develop those cost-effective solutions. We're going to talk a little bit about pretreatment and how that interacts with the Kleins Island wastewater plant in Allentown and trying to balance the loading that is received at both of those facilities to the greatest benefit of the region. Certainly achieving plant reliability long-term is extremely important, and then maximizing value if there is opportunity to capture additional revenue through tax credits or the natural gas capture. That's part of what we want to achieve with this program. All right, so how it works. The industries that are located in the Fogelsville area, there's a small number, as I mentioned, 22 businesses, but it's really even a smaller number of large industries that are generating the bulk of the loading to the plant. So the biological oxygen demand on the plant is significant. And I'm going to stick with using pounds. So pounds per day of BOD that's being generated by those large industries is up to about 65,000 pounds per day. That is a very large loading into the plant. That pretreatment plant is removing, in Fogelsville, is removing almost all of it. removing about 64,000 pounds per day of BOD from the system. And what happens is that that flow with all of that BOD removed goes back into the pipe and makes its way to Allentown. Along the way downstream, as that flow, that water is traveling to Allentown, there's other users that add flow into the pipe. So your homes and businesses in Lower Macungie Township or the Borough of Emmaus or Salisbury Township, City of Allentown, all adding flow and load to the system. So that when we finally reach the Kleins Island wastewater treatment plant at the bottom of the system, we have added about 42,000 pounds of new load into the plant. So you can imagine just by looking at this little diagram, if the pretreatment plant wasn't there, we would essentially be taking the 65,000 pounds plus the 42,000 pounds and needing to treat all of that at Kleins Island, which that plant is not designed to handle. So we're taking this industrial load out of the system at the top so that the Kleins Island plant can handle it, the rest of it at the bottom. Does that make sense? Just as an overall schematic. So this project, we're trying to address three major challenges. First, and probably most critical, is that the pretreatment plant is at the end of its useful life. There's major significant replacements needed, which we talked about last year when Jacobs presented their master plan. A significant additional challenge is that there's really no remaining capacity in the plant for new growth. So if our existing customers want to grow, or if there's new industrial customers that want to locate here, we don't have capacity at the plant to manage that. And probably a most significant challenge in terms of how to develop a solution is that there's really no financial structure in place that would allow us to capture the capital cost to do these projects. That's a major problem. We're going to talk about all three of these. First of all, going back to the Jacobs master plan, in 2022, Jacobs, who is the contract operator, did a comprehensive condition assessment of all the buildings and processes and systems, and showing them here on this slide in a little more detail. Their main findings, I'll turn to AJ to go through some of these and especially point out the ones that are really the most critical things for us right now.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so the major issues with the current plan are listed here, but I'm going to go in reverse order. The secondary clarifiers are the mechanisms need to be removed. They're basically at the end of their useful life and at risk of complete failure. We don't have an easy way to do that because we have to they need to be in operation. It's fairly complicated rehab. The aeration trains, we did some additional work recently. We found that there's issues there with the shafts of the mixers. Some of the shafts have sheared off, some of the blades are missing. And it's very difficult to do this work because the plant needs to remain in operation. The cryo plant, the cold boxes needs to be replaced. Again, it's a single point of failure part of the plant where we don't have a backup for the cryo. We either have to buy liquid oxygen or fix what's there. So those are the three main areas. And then the electrical system, we're doing a testing evaluation right now of the entire plant to see what can be retained and what needs to be replaced. So yeah, there's a lot of work. We estimate somewhere around $15 million of critical upgrades for the near term.
So AJ, when you're mentioning the $15 million in the near term, that's just the kind of the most critical items that are needed to allow us to operate for how much longer?
Right. So yeah, so we put together a study by AECOM to identify these things. It's a bridge. It's basically like a 10-year type thing where we can buy ourselves some time to get to the next phase. Some of these things need to be done, whether they give us, 10 years or 20, they need to be replaced. Otherwise, we're going to run into problems. But yeah, that's And that work is envisioned to start next year and try to get most of it done in 2025.
So that's the repair and replacement of the aging pieces. The pieces that AJ is mentioning, the 15 million, that's kind of just the first most critical items, but there's a much broader, bigger set of projects that are required for repair and replacement of the rest of the facility. And then we add on to that the concept of future flows and loads. And these graphs you've seen or you saw last year in the presentation from Jacobs. Essentially what these graphs show is that for both hydraulic capacity and loadings, we are over designed today. So these are 2021 figures, and we're over the design capacity for BOD and we're over flow. We're also over for TSS or solids. And the other bars that are shown on these graphs are estimates of future increases in flows and loads based on growth projections from the industries that are existing, as well as some growth from new customers. This is a real challenge if we want to allow our customers to grow and we want the region to grow. We need to be able to treat what's coming into the plant. The third major, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
Want
Jeff.
to wait to the end or for questions?
Whatever works for you.
So what is the, so at Klein's Island, maybe it's a question for Andrew, since you're doing your chapter 94 report. What's the permanent allowable organic loading at Klein's Island, and what does that look like as far as actual loading?
So design is 70,000 pounds.
Okay.
And we've been seeing right around 42 to 43,000 pounds of organic stream coming into the plant.
All right, thank you.
So we talked about the repair and replacement needs. We talked about the current and future flows and loads. I want to spend just a little bit talking about the financial challenge and the financial structure. And really the way that the system is set up contractually, there's not a lot of room for capital needs to be met. Some key components. Boston Beer is our only direct customer to this facility. Essentially, they're the only customer that pays a rate that's directly tied to the cost of this pretreatment facility. The other industries are indirect customers. They pay through their rate to Upper Macungie Township and through a surcharge, but it's not a direct revenue stream to this pretreatment facility.
Question.
Yes.
Those other industries, they go through the local township municipality. And how do they calculate that rate? Is it any function of discharge or volume or?
Yeah, so the township bills for flow according to their rate schedule. And then there's a sampling program, so we know what the strength of their waste is that they're discharging. And there's a surcharge that the township then charges them. However, it's the township surcharge program and it's the township's revenue. We recover from the townships through another mechanism that we call excess removal credits. I'm going to get into that in a little bit.
I'm already glazing over.
I know, but it's essentially, it's not a direct tie to our costs of the pretreatment plant. Yeah.
Just to expand on that, just because this has always been a very unique situation, I think. And then Allentown back in the day used to monitor and surcharge the individual municipalities,
Yeah,
correct?
still
For
do.
the strength of their waste, where other authorities and communities don't do that. They permit and surcharge the industries directly, and whoever's the industrial pretreatment program, holder of the permit, runs the program, then they collect that high strength waste surcharge, and there's no monitoring of what's coming in from 5 different manholes from Salisbury that come into Allentown. So it's definitely a unique way that it's done here compared to other communities in the area.
I would agree. It's not set up the way that most systems are set up. this is kind of these are the contractual requirements that we have dating back to the 1950s or so.
Well, I bring it up because we're
Yeah.
talking about changing agreements in the Act 537 plan.
Exactly.
Maybe it's something to consider.
Yeah.
Could be done
And
differently.
even for this plan, even if we weren't doing the Regional Act 537 plan and everything that's involved with that, it's clear that for this facility, something needs to change about how we're capturing revenue, because the agreements are not set up to help us renew the facility when it's needed. There's just a couple other things on the revenue side. The waste hauler program is significant. We do receive significant revenue from the waste haulers. But that program, the rates that we charge to the waste haulers is driven by market studies that have been done to show the comparability to other areas. So there's some limits on how far we can go with what we charge to the waste haulers. And then the other waste that comes through the plant is essentially residential waste that's commingled with the industrial waste. And so there's not really a mechanism to capture revenue from those customers because they don't really need retreatment. It's complicated and not set up in the best way. This chart, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just getting back to the waste hauler program, the input that they also provided beneficial component to the digesters to the operation, do they not?
Yes, the hauler program is challenging. There are some haulers that are providing waste that are beneficial to the treatment process. And that's good. That's something we would want to maintain for the future. But there's also waste haulers that are coming from sites where they can't discharge to the public system. They need a pretreatment plant to discharge to, and there's some risk associated with that. We've talked before about how we manage our hauler program to mitigate those risks. So it's a big program. It's extremely important for our region because these wastes need to have a place to go. But we'll need to, as we move forward, balance out the benefits to those costs and those risks.
So this waste hauler, do we charge him based on the type of the waste they bring to us, or it's just based on the quantity?
But both. I mean, so they're charged based on what they're bringing as well as how much. Yeah. So maybe not to get too deeply into the financials here, because that's not what this presentation is about. But I wanted to at least give you the pie chart. I think it's even without being able to read all the black writing on this graph, you can see there's really three main components to our revenue makeup, with Boston Beer, the waste hauler program, and these excess removal credits being the three main components. And as I mentioned before, Boston Beer is the only revenue component that's tied to the actual cost of this facility. The rest of the revenue is generated either by market drivers or contractual requirements with the municipal agreements. So most of that was background to kind of lay out where we've been and some of the challenges that we're trying to address. In the spring of 2023, we presented the master plan that Jacobs had put together, and they had offered up a cost estimate of $267 million to do all the things that need to be done to address the repair and replacement of critical facility components, as well as to upgrade and expand for future growth. And that really kicked off a massive undertaking to conduct value engineering and look at many, many other alternatives to try to drive down that cost. We're going to go through at a somewhat high level what that looked like. So the alternatives, rather than list them all and try to explain each one in detail, and kind of give you just the major categories of things that we looked at. So one of the major categories is how could we segregate the industrial flows? As I mentioned before, the flows are intermingled with the domestic waste. If there are ways to segregate the flows that could potentially change the way the project is designed, as well as would have some cost impacts for the new pump stations or force mains that would be required to do that. We looked at a variety of anaerobic treatment technologies that are listed there. And if you really want to know what they are, AJ is here to tell us all the great details about those different technologies. But essentially the anaerobic process is a change from how we're currently treating using an anaerobic treatment process. Switching over to anaerobic treatment would allow for capture of biogas and potentially have some upside benefit, but also some operating risks. We also looked at different levels of polishing, call it polishing the treated waste. So to achieve the targeted discharge that we're looking for, and that will impact what we have to replace in terms of the existing pretreatment plant. And then the last component is looking at how much of that loading that we're removing from the pretreatment plant today actually could be handled at Klein's Island, and are there ways to shift that load to Klein's Island without creating additional operation or cost risk for Klein's Island. So you can imagine, looking at all of these different categories of alternatives, we ended up with a pretty lengthy list of alternatives to evaluate. I put this map up just to give you a sense of, if it's helpful, where we are and what that segregation could look like. Pretreatment plant is located here at the bottom of the map. And we have each of these squares is an industry that we're serving. So they're kind of aligned sort of along some major roadways that could be where we would place additional pump stations and a force main to separate those wastes from the domestic strength waste. There's this one on the east side is yellow, so it's kind of hard to see, but we have industries kind of located along this pathway as well. So if we wanted to segregate the industrial waste, we kind of put some thoughts together about how that would work. So at this point, I want to turn it over to AJ to share the review process and what the recommended solution.
Great, thanks a lot. Yeah, so we thought it would be worthwhile to kind of take a step back and have two different groups look at the alternatives. So step one was a senior review panel. We had two people one from AECOM, one from Jacobs, not involved with the project, but at a very senior level. I've looked at these things before, and they reviewed the different options and gave us some really good feedback. And then coming out of that, we thought it'd be worthwhile to enlist the help of firms that are more geared towards industrial treatment plants like this one is. So we created this technical advisory group made up of these firms listed here, and held several workshops to see if we could zero in on what the best solution would be. So go to the next one. So this ended up, this is the final selected solution. It's called 8B. There were lots of different alternatives, but this one we thought was the best because it took there are different phrases, the knee of the curve. Which option gave us the best, most efficient way to treat this waste? So we're taking the highest strength, highest temperature industrial dischargers and sending them to anaerobic pretreatment. So a lot of work around bulk volume fermenters versus UASB. We ultimately selected the UASB, just a more efficient process, easier to operate. And then related to this option is upgrades at the existing plant. So we looked at, could we come up with some other process that could get us away from using the existing plant, because there's a lot of work needed there, but we ultimately concluded that modifying the existing plant would help us, would be the best solution. The other thing you'll notice is this blue line on the left there, where we just bypass all treatment. And that was done to create what we're calling the load shift. So instead of sending 25 of BOD and suspended solids down Klein's Island, we're going to send a higher strength waste. And by bypassing a lot of the plant, we'll be able to achieve that. So it's really a combination of some new treatment processes and upgrading existing. The other important element is the biogas piece on the right-hand side. So we're gonna take the biogas from the anaerobic pretreatment and we're going to basically put it back into the grid and get revenue from that. There's a few positives to that. The anaerobic pretreatment is eligible for a 30 to 40% tax credit from federal government that we should be eligible for. And then, like I said, getting the revenue back from the gas is going to help fund the project. So, yeah, a lot of different elements to it, but the heart of it is that anaerobic pretreatment step. That's essentially going to replace our very high operating costs, high purity oxygen system. Okay, yeah.
Excuse me. How does the tax credit work for a nonprofit?
Yeah, so basically the way the program is set up now, and they just added this in the last year, municipal agencies like us can get the tax credit. We have to we have to pay for everything and then we get the credit back at the end. It's just that they cut us a check.
Based on our tax?
No, sorry, it's called a tax credit, but it's really based on the cost of the project. So it's 30% of the cost of the project comes back as a check. Yeah.
That's baked in the Inflation Reduction Act. That's the source of it.
Oh, okay. Our tax dollars.
But I think that's, yeah, I guess the one other thing I'll mention on this is you asked a question about the hauler program. We're gonna be very selective about the hauler program. Certain haulers will be great for generating biogas, other haulers will be not so great, and we're gonna create incentives for them to, there's gonna be, basically places where they can go, or we may have to eliminate certain haulers to make this work, but there are some modifications to the hauler program as a result of these processes.
AJ, can I ask the same question? So for the pretreatment plant, what's the current organic loading and what's the design loading?
Yeah, the current pretreatment plant design loading is it's about 76,500 pounds per day.
Okay.
And the new loading is basically, we're not changing the loading this.
I mean, what is it actually now?
Yeah, that's the 70, right?
Talk about
70,000.
like today.
Yes.
It fluctuates based on what Boston Beer is doing, but
Okay.
if you know.
70,000 pounds per day.
And then for TSS, it's like 25,000. And that we're typically over.
So the design is around 77,000, but it's.
BOD.
That's what I'm asking.
But then TSS is like
Right.
25 and right.
When the master plan was done, we used 2021 data, and that was a bad year. When I say bad, as if Boston Beer was sending us a lot of load. We attribute to COVID. So in 2021 was a bad conservative year. Like today, it's not gonna be at 76,000, but in 2021, the yearly average was above.
So what I'm getting at is you currently have, what you're saying, 65,000 or so, plus 42 is, 107,000 pounds to be dealt with, and the Kleins Island plant can only handle 70, so something has to happen.
Right.
Whether it's pre-treatment on site, whether it's improvements, whether there has to be something that happens.
Right. Yeah, and so this entire project, or the way we're thinking about it, is not just to address what is kind of going wrong at pretreatment today, but also to set us up for the future. So if our existing customers want to grow, that they have capacity for that, or if we have new industries coming in, we have capacity for that. Because currently, we're pretty much maxed out at pretreatment. Yeah. Want to handle this one?
Sure, yeah, so this sort of what I went over, we came up with this 8B option, which uses the UASB technology. We did opt for the load shift to push more flow down to Kleins Island. It's consistent with the current agreements. And then the total cost is 181 million at the pretreatment plant and another 8 million at Klein's Island. And those costs include the anaerobic treatment process, all the upgrades to the pretreatment plant, and the gas treatment to make the gas meet the UGI spec for the grid. So we're looking at a number of different kind of phasing options, but the one that's considered, is the base, the AP, is to do these critical upgrades now within the next year or two, and then following right after that, we'll do the anaerobic pretreatment. Once that anaerobic is in place, it frees up some capacity for us to take certain basins down, and then we go right into doing some additional work at the pretreatment plant. So it would be a 5 to 6 year program to get us to the new complete 8B option. The other way to look at it is what we're calling 8B bridge, which is just do the upgrades to the pretreatment and buy us some time, maybe 5 to 10 years, and then do all the major work, the anaerobic work. There's pros and cons. These are things that we want to discuss with the industry, but basically the benefit of doing it now is we have this tax credit, which probably won't be here in 10 years. And we have potential for a grant, which may not be here in 10 years. That's the benefit. And then the other option, the AP bridge, is a pushing off of the costs. And it's really, we have a financial model being created right now to show the difference between the two for the industries.
So a couple points I wanted to share about the tax credit and renewable natural gas. It just to kind of put that risk in perspective with the phasing, if we're going to push things off. As AJ mentioned, there is this tax credit through the Inflation Reduction Act that would bring 30 to 40% of that project cost back to us. And just want to be clear, we're only talking about the components of the project that relate to the biogas production. So it's not the entire project that's eligible, but a significant portion of the project is eligible. We have learned that program, the best incentive will be available if we can qualify this as a 2024 project. There's some hurdles to achieve that, but it is potentially achievable. If we kick off the project after 2024, be some different standards coming into place about procurement, as well as just political risk of the program in the future. Tax credit would be reduced if we're issuing tax exempt bonds. That's kind of where the tie-in goes to the taxes. So if we're funding the project up front through private investments or grants or other forms of funding, we get more of the credit back. But if we're using tax exempt bonds for the whole project, we take a haircut on the tax credit. That's kind of how that works. We think 12 million is a conservative estimate of what we might be able to achieve with that tax credit. Could be more depending on which project components are eligible for. So that's a significant support for the project. On the renewable natural gas, as AJ mentioned, there is some work that needs to be done to purify the gas that comes off the digesters to make it eligible to be sold back to a pipeline. And that we think that that's very achievable. And I guess the benefit is that the current estimate of revenue is about $1.9 million per year in revenue that we could use or we could receive by selling the methane or the biogas back to the system. That could be a very significant offset for the users. So certainly while doing a smaller project now and deferring the larger project until later could be beneficial for certain reasons, put those two major financial components at risk for not being able to achieve them if we do the phasing. So since this summer, roughly August of 2023, we kicked off a fairly robust communication with our large industries that are using the system and focused on providing the same project background. We also worked with them on what their flow and loading projections are. So are they planning to double production? Are they planning to just stay this, what are they really looking for in the future? We provided some conceptual cost sharing approaches to kind of like as a litmus test or temperature test to see kind of where the industries might be thinking about investing or whether they would be open to talking about alternative financing for this project. And we also applied for a grant in January, a $30 million grant application became available. We jumped on that and were able to submit that and got industry support for that grant application, which is great. Been a very challenging set of conversations to get to a conclusion with the industries. Certainly our own engineering and cost estimates are still being refined, and being able to give the industries a real number to look at has been challenging. We're getting really close now. And also just to be aware that the full cost that we're talking about, the $181 million that AJ mentioned, is not all attributed to just those industries. There are regional components to the project, such as creating capacity for new growth. Also just managing the hydraulics of the system and the other flows that are coming through the plant, and other components. So trying to secure regional commitment for that has been challenging. It's difficult for the industries to know what their commitment level will be if they're not sure of the regional commitment. So there's a lot of conversations that are happening in parallel. And ultimately, where we started this conversation saying that there are not specific contracts in place with these industries, except for Boston Beer, it really does leave a lot of the decision-making to each industry to decide what they would like to do, because they do certainly have the option to treat on site if they were to determine that being part of our program is not cost beneficial for them. So we're kind of, as I said, having a lot of these conversations in parallel and trying to get all of them to, make a decision kind of at the same time, possibly in a couple of months, roughly in June, we're hoping for some commitments. So just to wrap up some next steps, we do have Raf Tellis on board doing a financial analysis. And we saw a draft of that last week. It was very well done. We're looking for more refined work from them in the next week or so to look at the capital cost sharing as well as rate setting for the future. And that will give us what we need to have those more detailed conversations with the industries and give them a little more meat on the bones for them to begin making their decisions. And then also working with the municipalities and other regional partners like the county and the Lehigh Valley Economic Development people to understand where that regional commitment is. All of those things, all the stars have to align for us to be able to come back with a true plan and a real decision for LCA to consider. That is all we have for today. I'm very happy to entertain any questions or discussion. It's a heavy presentation, a lot of big things going on with this.
Just one question, that the high flow storage tank that's out there, is that in any way involved? Does that go just come into the tank and go back to the interceptor, or does that go through the plant, or is that in any way involved in this?
It does go through the plant, and Jacobs is currently using it now at times to help modulate when they're overloaded. But yeah, it's coming in through the plant.
And for what it's worth, we just did an inspection of it inside out, and it's in very good shape. So it's going to be able to be used longer term.
It's good to hear.
Good news. Any other questions from the board? What to digest?
Well, to be commended for all the homework you've done. seems that you've got the, at least the, if we're to start spending money where it has to go, put a lot of folks together to brainstorm it and come forward with a lot of recommendations. I commend you for that.
I mean, even going through value engineering, reducing the cost,
Yeah.
almost 100. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal work.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank everybody. All right, let's move on to the next topic then. We have under wastewater, regional sewer capacity and wet weather planning, engineering and program support. Seeking approval, it's the green documents within a board package, digital board package pages 56 to 65.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. And as a tie into Lisa's presentation on the PTP, this is directly related to all the effort that has been ongoing and continue in the future. Just to level set everyone, this is about the EECOM 537 program management authorization request. This is actually the 5th quote unquote big program request. There's one in 2020, 2 in 2022, 1 in 23. This will be number 5. So again, as a refresher on the 537, I'm whenever I think about it, I think of 5 main components. We have the source reduction plans, which are gigantic. We have the Kleins Island work, the wet weather solution. We have the PTP, which we just heard about. Then we have the 2 conveyance projects, the KISS interceptor near the water plant and the Western Lehigh interceptor. So those are the 5 main components of the 537. And AECOM is, of course, helping with all 5. But in particular, for this request, is the two plants that are the beefiest piece for AECOM. Again, we have a rough idea on the PTP solution, but there's a little bit more work to do to finalize it. And of course, that ties in whatever the final solution at the top is, it's going to be dictates the bottom. So again, when AECOM prices this, it's a best guess on how much it's going to cost per month. So that's the basis how they do it. And again, I want to emphasize that we're approaching the 4-year mark, 4+ year mark. So we're almost at the finish line. This is the last push to get a final cohesive technical document to support the 537. So again, if for some reason something happens next month and one of the tasks aren't needed, then they just won't bill it. So it's based on what we need. And just to clarify something too, it's on the proposals to Liesel, but AECOM has access to all kind of people within LCA. AJ uses them all the time. I use them. Andrew uses them. So it's across the board within LCA is AECOM's presence. Their specific burn rate, their spends to date recently, I guess in 2023, has been significant. And that's reflected in the proposal. I had them stated, to get it through September of this year. That's when I'm still hoping that we can have a final work product by September of this year. So again, if we can't hit September, we'll readjust when we get closer to that date. But again, the proposal lists all the tasks. It looks similar to the May 2023 proposal, where it's broad brush items that they're going to do at the PTP, broad brush items they're going to do at the Kleins Island. Broad brush general consult or general items. But one of the biggest things is the Arcadis coordination. We have to get that right regarding the KISS interceptor and the SRPs. The SRPs are going to be my main focus over the next couple of months. Just because I know that's DEP's focus. So there's items to do with the SRPs, that AECOM is going to help us with in conjunction with Arcadis. So again, the big deliverable will be a final cohesive set of either one big document or maybe a PTP document, a client's audit document. That's going to be an appendix to the 537. You know, it may not have been clearly stated in the proposal, but they're going to assist with the writing of specific sections within the 537. That's ongoing now. I do want to have a first draft.
Can't they just turn it over to AI and have it just?
At this point, why not, right? I do want I do want a first draft by the end of May. That's not very far from now. So, you know, we'll have, you know, of course, we have the shell from the interim plan, and we have the shell started ready for the new plan. But again, I have a target for Memorial Day for the first draft. So there's gonna be a ton of writing between now and May, not just from AECom, but across the board from all consultants involved. Again, I have to go through September of 2024, so we'll see how these next couple of months shake out as we get towards the finish line. All that said and done, what I'm requesting is a capital project authorization to AECom, amount of $315,400. Then that is AECom's request for $275,400. And again, this year, this should be the last request before it's submitted. Any questions?
So moved.
Made by Linda. Seconded by Amir. Questions? I have a question. What happened to task D?
Task B was from something that dropped out. I forget why they did that. I think it's their internal billing.
Proposal either, so.
Yeah, it's their internal billing, the way they set it up.
All right, we have before us a capital project authorization, Regional Act 537 plan, program management, planning phase for a total amount of $315,400. It includes a professional services authorization to AECom of $275,400 for tasks A, B, C, and E. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, passed. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is Sand Spring wastewater treatment plant treatment process modification. Seeking approval, blue documents within the Word package, digital package pages 68 to 69.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Hopefully you guys haven't been worn down too much by those two presentations. This one's fairly straightforward. If you recall from Andrew's monthly operations reports, we've had a history of problems out at Sand Spring with the quality, the discharge quality. We've been issued notices of violation from DEP for ammonia, for total nitrogen, phosphorus, total suspended solids, biochemical oxygen demand or BOD. And this is after the plant was replaced. Okay, the plant was replaced about 2 years ago. The loading characteristics to the plant have changed, coinciding with we suspect a warehouse development. And the new plant is not performing as it was intended to. So we had a process performance evaluation report commissioned about a year ago. We were given the deliverable from a firm called Tetra Tech, and they're process experts. And the process performance evaluation report recommended short-term improvements that could be made to increase treatment capacity without adding additional tankage. And so we're looking at that option first and intending to improve the treatment performance by implementing a short-term recommendation, which is it's called IFAS. It stands for Integrated Fixed Film Activated Sludge Technology. And basically what it is you're adding additional surface area in your reactor tanks kind of like pasta wheels. If you can picture the little rotelli things, it's kind of like that, adding additional surface area for the microorganisms to attach to and basically put your treatment plant on steroids. It will, the additional microorganism area will nitrify, and that's part of the process. That's critical to have settleable sludge. You have to nitrify. What that is, it's converting the influent ammonia to nitrate and settleable biomass. Okay, right now the plant is not nitrifying well, especially in colder temperatures. So what this project is, it's putting this, what we call heavy carrier media. It's an attached growth media into the SBR tanks, and then some other improvements to keep the media in there and to improve the quality of the discharge. So we put together a project. We bid the project last month. We received 2 bids from 2 general contractors, both contractors we are very familiar with. The low bidder is a firm called Desco out of Fleetwood, out near Kutztown. They've done quite a bit of water and wastewater treatment work. They are qualified. Their price is $273,077. You can see the 2 prices are very close, which means to me that the contractors understood the scope of work very well. And the scope of work includes 20 cubic meters, around 20 cubic yards of material per reactor tank, or 40 total, and then screens around what we call our WAS pumps, our waste activated sludge pumps, which get rid of the settleable material and put it into the sludge holding tank. The screens around those pumps will prevent the pasta wheels from getting sucked out, basically. And then a mixer to keep the pasta wheels in suspension, and some other miscellaneous improvement supports to the diffusers on the bottom, because the heavy carrier media is heavier than water. So to keep it from damaging the diffusers, which are set up about 6 to 8 inches above the floor. So anyway, all that work will be performed by the general contractor, including furnishing and installing that medium. And we will have the firm that we commissioned for the design. They're also on board for the construction phase. So you will not see a separate PSA for them, because you guys already authorized that. So what I'm asking for today is a capital project authorization in the amount of $303,077, and $273,077 of that is for the general contract.
You said, I don't remember, the plant was just finished 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Is something new coming into it now that wasn't there 2 years ago, and that's causing the problem, or wasn't it designed right in the first place?
The plant was designed using the criteria. It was not expanded. Okay, we provided a plant with the exact same design criteria as the old plant, because we could not expand it without having the township go through Act 537 planning. So the plant itself was designed properly. I think maybe some of the data we had might have been inaccurate rather. I think perhaps the flow metering was inaccurate, but it did also coincide with the warehouse development. So there was a loading change. The information they provided us about the additional loading, it appeared at the time that we had adequate capacity to handle. It turns out it is too much. It is too much. And if we make these improvements, we think we can restore the plant to compliance, treatment quality.
Well, I was
quality.
looking for if it was designed the way without the extra loading
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Then we'll go back to them and say, hey, something's not working.
Yeah.
That's not what,
No, good question.
that's what I was,
According to the third party that did the process performance evaluation report, based on the criteria that we gave the consultant, the plant was designed adequately to handle that criteria.
How much did the project, how much was that project in 2021?
Oh, it was an expensive plant per gallon because we didn't realize the economy of scale is only 35,000 gallons per day. It was about $3.5 million. Soft costs included.
Is there going to have to be a replacement of the media in some time frame?
That's a good question. Perhaps, I'm not sure. We don't have this product in use at any of our other plants. I don't know if there's like a UV degradation component there, but the media is always in suspension. And I think it's designed to last. I think it's designed to be very durable. Yeah, I believe we won't have to replace it anytime soon.
This IFAS technology is currently being used in other wastewater treatment facility. I remember
Yes.
it was a European technology last time we talked.
Yes,
Easily used.
yes. It is not common in SBRs, but it is used.
Can we leverage this media at other facility?
Well, we're not really having the same
I understand that.
problem, but perhaps that technology, mean at Klein's Island or at retreatment. I'm not sure it would directly apply to those installations, but I'm very curious to see how it works. And if it does work, it could be something useful for our smaller.
Yeah, I mean, if you recall, there was more surface area goes through and so allows
More treatment.
more treatment. So is that a way to expand your smaller plant to larger capacity? I'm just thinking of,
Yeah.
where's the application of this technology that we can leverage at other facility as well?
It is, but not hydraulic. You're still gonna get the same flow in as the flow out, but biologically, yes.
Yes, biologically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chuck, is there any concern about not having the permit?
Well, we're not gonna proceed till we get that permit. I'm in contact with DEP. It appears everything is administratively complete. I'm just pumping the brakes until we get that, something formal from them. But they were on board throughout this, knowing that we're exploring this.
Okay.
So I don't think it'll be a problem, but no, we're not gonna proceed with construction until we have that in hand.
Sounds good.
You labeled this as short-term improvements. Are there long-term improvements anticipated?
Well, I guess we call it short term because we're not adding any additional tankage. And that would be a long term.
So you're thinking this solve the problem with permit exceedances?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are you looking at me?
We have before us
Oh, okay, yes.
a capital project authorization, construction phase, suburban division, Sand Spring wastewater treatment plant, process intensification upgrade project for a total of $303,077. It includes a construction contract with Desco Design and Construction for $273,077.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Amir and second by Linda. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Have it.
Thank you.
Okay, one last wastewater item, I think. Yes. It's a emergency declaration, Oswald Road sanitary replacement seeking approval. That's just to be retroactively, the salmon documents within the board package, digital board package, pages 70 to 73.
All right, thank you. So as you mentioned, you do have an emergency declaration that was administratively approved back in February. If you recall, back in 2019, there was a corrective action plan amendment submitted to the PADEP for Lynn Township Sewer System. And that was to address the hydraulic overload condition, and all the I&I that was within that system. That plan is designed for 0.08 million gallons per day or 80,000 gallons per day. On a normal day, we're typically flowing in the 60,000 gallon range. If you recall back into December of 23 and January and really into February, we had a lot of rainfall. The hydraulic conditions in a lot of our plants were pushed to their max. And just for example, at Lynn Township, we were flowing for both December and January over the hydraulic limit. We were around 0.088 million gallons per day, so a very large increase than what we typically see. During some of the normal work with field services, they were CCTVing some of the collection system. They did find 2 leaking laterals on Oswald Road that were of great concern to them. They brought it to the plant side. As we mentioned, our plants were flowing way more than they should be. And it's something that we needed to address immediately. They were flowing at about 15 gallons per minute. So if you add that up, it's about 21,000 gallons per day, assuming it's flowing at that rate, 24 hours. So because the sewer laterals were so deep, the field services crew was not able to correct the problem by themselves. So we did ask for approval, and we had Shoreline Excavation come in, make the repairs on those 2 laterals. And once those repairs were made in mid-February, the flows did drop about 10%. So there was definitely an improvement from just those 2 laterals that were fixed. With that being said, the total amount with Sherman Excavation was $56,662.50. So I will be asking for a retroactive approval for that amount for Sherman Excavation. If there's any questions, if you want to ask.
Question, how do you decide what contractor to contact when you do this type of emergency work?
Want to answer that one?
Yeah, we have 2 or 3 contracts that we're generally comfortable with. Shoreman and Joe Bradley are our 2 primary ones. We've done this type of work with them before. And due to the, like Andrew had mentioned, the depth of the laterals, it was well beyond our capability of the machinery that we own. And we know that they can go up to 22 feet with special boom extensions and stuff. So Shoreman, between Sherman and Joe Bradley, it's a clip of.
So you rotate the work between these contractors?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Board? Okay. I need a motion for retroactive approval for the February 7th, 2024 emergency declaration, expenditures and waiver of standard purchasing guidelines on Lynn Township lateral sewer replacements, costing $56,662.50.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jeff. All right, any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. All right. On the agenda, item number 7, the monthly financial review, held in February. I'm sorry, the February report would be reported in April. Monthly system operations overview is next on the agenda.
Great.
Andrew, yeah.
Yes, so in front of you, you do have the February 2024 operations report. We'll start out is the injury report and any accidents. There were 4 vehicle incidents that happened in February and 1 injury. It was not a reportable. There was just minor first aid when one of our employees dropped one of the gates for one of the dump pits onto her leg. Those caused minor abrasions. Flipping over to the next page. All of the water production was pretty normal for this time of the year. Go down to wastewater. Once again, Klein's Island is more elevated than what we normally see. We're flowing around 35 million gallons per day. But once again, we did have 2.33 inches of rain in February, so that definitely contributed to that. There was 1 bypass, and that was at Heidelberg Heights. During one of those rainstorms, it was towards the end of February. The plant was placed into bypass mode, which was on February 28th. That bypass did last until March 12th. So it was a very large, long bypass. The total amount was 539,795 gallons. And just as a reminder, when these plants are in bypass, they're not bypassing the total amount of flow going to the facility. It's treating to the max capacity and then bypassing the amount that it cannot handle. There was 4 main breaks in Allentown and 1 in Suburban. The 1 in Suburban was caused by a contractor that was doing one of the main leg replacements. They did end up breaking one of the lines. It caused loss of pressure through a very large portion of the system. So there was a boil water advisory, and that was issued February 15th. And then after 2 days of coliform sampling, the boil water advisory was lifted. As I mentioned, there was 1 injury, and then we already covered the emergency declaration. Going to the last page, the 1 bypass at Heidelberg also caused a permanent exceedance. There was also 3 permanent exceedances at Sand Spring, which, as Chuck mentioned a little bit ago, directly relating to ammonia and ammonia loading, as well as total nitrogen exceedances. And we also did have 3 exceedances in Wynwood. We're still struggling a little bit with that plant due to the hydraulic loading conditions that have happened earlier this year. If you recall, there was, or actually I believe there's 2 sanitary sewer overflows within the plants. So we did lose a lot of that biomass within those tankages. But we're still struggling a little bit to recover there.
Andrew, on that, the Wynwood, what kind of permanent exceedances were they?
Off the top of my head, I believe it was ammonia loading, and CBOD. I think it was just, I have to verify that.
I heard ammonia, so that gets back to, is that something that could be using the same technology?
Yeah, I think we really need to evaluate once we get this installed. I think it is a viable option to help with some of the other facilities. Wynwood would probably be my #1 target for trying to implement something like that. So really hoping it works out well. I have full confidence that it's going to. So yes, to answer your question earlier, I think it could help some of the smaller facilities.
Andrew, how'd you make out on Saturday? The rain?
Sore subject.
Okay.
Overall, the flows did not get extremely high, but we did have mechanical issues with one of our gate valves at Klein's Island. We did have 1 pump out of service that the motor was getting respun. So we're down there, and then with the gate, we could not get it open, and when they were working on it for about 4 hours, it's still a little iffy. But they were not able to get the gate open in time, so we did bypass for about 5 minutes. I don't have the total gallon calculation done yet, but it's a very small amount. It's just an unforeseen, unfortunate event.
Okay, are done. Any questions?
Yeah, just a question. The gate valve didn't work. These gate valves on a maintenance system.
They are. First, I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but it sort of got cockeyed. So when typically it opens normally or automatically, and they couldn't get it open, so they had to basically take it apart, reconstruct it and pull it up by a hoist, so it's actually opened via manual hoist at this point.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Staff comments?
Nothing.
Solicitor comments?
No comments, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Public comments on any topics whatsoever?
Thank you, Brian.
Yep, no, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny and Brian, for being here. Board member comments? Lots? All right. We have no executive sessions, so at this time we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.